this video, I'll be showing you the exact 10 players that you should be trading for before week 7 if you want to improve your fantasy football team. These are players that, for the most part, are currently going under the radar and are buy lows right now, even though their usage is very strong. And perhaps there's no better example of that than the Jets running back, their former second-round pick, Breece Hall, in the 2022 draft, because right now, his recent box score is giving you so much leverage in some trade negotiations. Let me show you. If you were a sick pup and watched the week 6 Saturday night London overseas game, wherever it was, you saw one of the worst games you'll ever watch, maybe the worst game I've ever watched for football. Breece Hall in this game, 22 carries, 59 yards. It was pretty disgusting. Overall, though, the Jets offense had negative 10 passing yards when you factor in sacks. Justin Fields was atrocious for just 45 total yards. Oh, let's look on the other side of this game. Not much was happening here either. Bo Nix, 174 yards, just looks fantastic compared to what Justin Fields was doing. You scroll down, nothing in the box scores for the running backs, nothing in the box scores for the fantasy relevant players like Courtland Sutton, even Troy Franklin, to some extent, J.K. Dobbins. It was all around a terrible game. Breece Hall gets lumped into that, but very quietly, he still saw good usage. And before this game, Breece Hall was a solid RB. He was a top 10 RB in week 1. He's had multiple top 20 performances right before this past week. Heck, the week before that, right, 2 weeks ago in week 5, his best performance of the season in his first game without Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen, who is somebody who is cutting into the workload of Breece Hall each week somewhat significantly, is now going to miss minimum another 6 to 10 weeks, maybe even the rest of the fantasy season. And we've seen now 2 games, the terrible week 6 game and week 5, that Breece Hall has gone out there without Braylon Allen, and his workload has been amazing. This is courtesy of Fantasy Life. Over those 2 games, 65% of the snaps, very strong, but more importantly, 78% of the backfield carries. Look at the other running backs here. Only Isaiah Davis the last 2 weeks has 7% of the backfield carries. Breece Hall is also leading the team in terms of his routes run. He's leading the team in terms of 2-minute offense, red zone usage. He's operating as a true 3-down back. That's why you saw 22 plus touches this past week, despite the production not being there. The usage remains extremely strong in one of the worst games you'll ever see. I don't think the Jets offense, it's not good. I don't think it's going to have negative 10 total passing yards each week. As you can see right here, according to JJ Zacharyson, Breece Hall has seen running back rush shares of 93 and 92% over the past 2 games without Braylon Allen. That's resulting in 14 and 22 carries, just elite workloads. You can see Ryan Heath also calls out the fact that he's seen 92% of the backfield carries, and maybe even more importantly, 100% of the backfield rush attempts inside the red zone. Now, this past week, the Jets offense wasn't getting to the red zone all that much. Based on recency bias, you might say they're never going to get to the red zone again, but trust me, the rest of the season, they're going to score another touchdown on offense. They're going to get to the red zone plenty of times, and Breece Hall, as of right now, is going to see all those touches when it comes to the backfield. And it's not like he's underperforming. Like, I see on Twitter people hating on Breece Hall. He puts up like these cryptic wide receiver type posts, and Jets fans absolutely hate Breece Hall, and other people just hate Breece Hall. He continues to be efficient, right? Top 5 in true yards per carry, top 10 in yards per touch this year. He looks awesome on a per touch basis. His game logs have been solid. This is a situation where he just hasn't scored a touchdown yet. You're getting a guy in Breece Hall. If we scroll down to what he's doing on Player Profiler right now, this is a guy between his targets where he ranks 6th amongst running backs, his carries where he ranks 12th. He's seeing a combined over 19 opportunities per game. Top 10 amongst running backs. He just has not found the end zone. If you're seeing nearly 20 opportunities per game, eventually you're going to score some touchdowns and you're going to start to become a top 10 fantasy RB like he's currently expected to be based on his usage. So I'm buying low on Breece Hall after this down game. Look at some of the trades. I mean, these are insane. Ramondre Stevenson's a joke. Jalen Waddle's probably a pretty fair deal overall based on Waddle's usage right now. I'd rather have Breece Hall. T. Higgins, give me Breece Hall. Marvin Harrison, who might be missing week 7 with a concussion, then he goes on bye. I'll take Breece Hall. Jordan Addison I actually like, but I'll still take Breece Hall. There's a lot of trades that have happened. All those trades I just showed you, as of today, as of this recording, the last 1 to 10 hours, you can go and get Breece Hall on the cheap right now. So throw some trade offers out there. Similar things could be said for Darren Waller, because I don't think people view Darren Waller at least the way that I'm starting to. Right now, in my opinion, Darren Waller is trending up so much that he's getting very close to being a top 5 tight end rest of season, which is crazy to say. We know Trey McBride is out there, but George Kittle's still banged up. Brock Bowers is still banged up. Sure, Travis Kelce is having a solid season. Jake Ferguson, since CeeDee Lamb is being out, but there's kind of like this muck after the top 2 or 3 tight ends. Tyler Warren's been great. And there's a world where Darren Waller starts to become in that conversation. He's definitely a top 10 tight end rest of the season. And you might be like, how is that the case, Sal? He only had 2 catches for 12 yards this past week. He did find the end zone that was late in that game, but he basically didn't do anything. Why are you telling me a guy who had 2 catches, who's only played in 3 NFL games in like the past 2+ years, is somebody that I want to be trading for? Well, everything is trending up for Darren Waller right now. His first game, he was limited to 27% of the snaps. The second game, they said they did not want to push him more than like 30 total snaps. That's what he played. He went out there on his 30 snaps, ran 26 routes, scored as well in that game. Another touchdown. He now has 4 touchdowns in 3 games. His game log so far, the tight end 4, the tight end 6. This past week, he was still a top 15 tight end. In fact, through 3 games this year, he ranks top 5 amongst all tight ends in fantasy points per game. Yes, he's been touchdown dependent in some regards, but the dude just saw a season high in usage. According to JJ Zachariason over on Twitter, he ran a route on 81% of Miami's dropbacks, by far a season high. His routes have now gone from 36% in week 1, 68%, now 81%. Once you start hitting as an NFL tight end around 75 to 80+% of the routes, and it's probably only going to keep trending higher for Darren Waller, you are an every down player. You are probably in line to be a top 12 fantasy asset at the position. But more importantly, like, Darren Waller is basically being used as a wide receiver. Like, I get it. He's labeled as a tight end. Almost every single one of his routes has been as a wide receiver this year. He's playing 35% of his snaps and routes out of the slot, and he's basically playing another 60% of them out wide. He's barely staying in and block. I don't even think he has a blocking snap, maybe 1 total on the season. Since Tyreek Hill went down, they're using Darren Waller as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, and he's only getting more snaps, usage, routes, and it's going to lead to targets and points moving forward. Now, he's not the same player he once was in his prime, but just look at the box scores of Darren Waller basically in his career since he came back from stepping away from the game. Top 5 tight end 2, tight end 6. Even towards the end of his career where he started to struggle with injuries, tight end 10, tight end 13. This year, he's currently the tight end 3 in fantasy points per game in PPR formats. I don't know where he's going to finish overall. The Miami Dolphins offense is kind of gross. Do they fire their coach? What's going on with Tua right now? Like, it looks all weird. But I do know that Darren Waller, as of today, is a top 10 tight end in fantasy, and it's only trending up. And right now, people just don't view him that way. So try and trade for him before it becomes obvious. Some of the deals happening right now, I mean, Byshell Tootin, give me Darren Waller. Tony Pollard, give me Darren Waller. Ladd McConkey, I want Ladd. T. Higgins, I mean, at this point, sure, keep T. Higgins. He's not really doing much for me overall, though. We'll see what happens with Joe Flacco the next few weeks. A lot of deals that you can get done here. Rashid Shaheed's been solid. I'll take Darren Waller. Obviously, it depends on your team needs. If you need a tight end, he's probably the #1 trade target tight end right now that you can get for a reasonable cost. Hey, real quick, 2 seconds of your time. If you're enjoying my content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And I have a goal to get to 200,000 subscribers by the end of the fantasy season. We're so close, so be sure to hit the subscribe button. Just double check, make sure you're subscribed. And you might be able to get Javonte Williams for a somewhat reasonable cost. Now, let's be honest here. The guy who has Javonte Williams, even though Javonte this past week, if we pull it up, had a down game. He had just 13 carries for 29 yards against the Panthers defense that is starting to look very good, just 2.2 yards per carry. Javonte failed to score 6 fantasy points in this game, but the person who has him, the guy or girl in your league, they know that Javonte for the most part this year has been good, but at least after this performance, maybe you get him a little bit cheaper than he was flirting with being like a top 5 rest of season running back or in that range before this game. You can see from JJ Zachariason on Twitter, he says that Javonte Williams ran 13 times for 29 yards against the Panthers, but he saw 81% of the rush attempts, so still an elite role, and a season high 23.5% target share. A 23.5% target share is pretty close to like the #1 wide receiver type target share on most teams in the NFL, usually 25 to 30% or so. That's elite usage. Now, this didn't lead to a lot of fantasy points, but it's just important to remember he's 2nd in the NFL in rushing yards. He's 4th in running back receptions, only 27th in receiving yards. How do you have 22 receptions and only 83 receiving yards? Obviously not good after the catch. Obviously, a lot of those are checkdowns, but look at the role that he's currently getting in this I was going to say Dolphins, Cowboys offense that is right now just putting up points and yardage. Over 15 carries per game, 4 targets per game. He ranks top 5 in the NFL in terms of running back touches. He's 7th in red zone touches in general. So everything is great for Javonte. I get it that it was a bad game, but that's going to happen. He still had the usage. Just to kind of emphasize how good he's been, every running back in the NFL with at least 500 yards from scrimmage and 6+ touchdowns this year. Devon Achane, a 2nd round, maybe even a 1st round fantasy pick. Jonathan Taylor was a 2nd round fantasy pick. Josh Jacobs was a 2nd round fantasy pick. Oh, Javonte Williams, who you probably got somewhere between the 8th and 12th round of your draft. He is right now, in terms of fantasy football, the league-winning late-round pick, and he's somebody that coming off of this bad week, I'm trying to trade for. We know that his only somewhat competition, Miles Sanders, is now on IR. Jaden Blue, the rookie, is starting to see some more snaps, but the way that Javonte's used in this offense, I don't think they're going to be trusting the rookie Jaden Blue to pass protect, to be out there for Dak Prescott. So right now, it's wheels up for Javonte Williams, who is top 10 in running back snap share, 13th in opportunity share. Everything looks very good for this guy in an offense right now in Dallas that leads the NFL in total yards per game. They're putting up, if we go to their overall points this year, 29.7 points per game. They're doing everything. They're getting to the red zone. They're throwing to the running back. Dak looks like an MVP candidate if they could just win some more games. Javonte's in a great situation. It's not going to be cheap to acquire him, but look at some of these deals that have happened over the past 24 hours. DK Metcalf, who's thriving on touchdowns right now, albeit a good season, I'll take Javonte Williams. Cam Scatterbo coming off of a 3-touchdown game. Obviously, he looks like the workhorse there. I'll take Javonte Williams, who's in a much better offense with a much more established, and I would say better, quarterback. JSN, you have to keep JSN. He is a top 5 player rest of season. Rico Dowdle is the perfect trade candidate, right? Rico Dowdle's been amazing. He's been an unbelievable 30-plus points in back-to-back weeks, but Chuba Hubbard is a captain. He is a captain on the Panthers, who they paid a lot of money last year, $12+ million per year. I wouldn't doubt that Rico Dowdle remains involved, maybe even sees 60% of the backfield carries, but Chuba Hubbard's going to come back and cut into that elite workload, and most likely, I'll take Javonte Williams. Now, if you want to see my number one trade target at every single position for this week to help you improve your fantasy team and ultimately win your matchup and win your league, you could check it out completely free with the link in the description below, or by heading to topfantasytrades.com. That is topfantasytrades.com. I will take you to this page. You enter your email, and I'll send you that number one trade target at every position for this week, and then you'll get it every single week moving forward. Be sure to check your spam and promotional folders if you don't see it. Now, a lot of people always ask me questions. Should I trade for this guy or should I trade for that guy? That's why I built my top 150 rest of season rankings. It shows you in order, if we redrafted today, exactly where I would have every single person ranked. So you just trade for the guys who are higher than the players on your team. You can get that top 150 rest of season rankings to help with your trades and all the other tools that I have on a daily basis going out in the fantasy blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in theirs. If you want to learn more about the blueprint, you can check out this link down below in the description. It takes you to this page, or you can just go to jointheblueprint.com. You can learn more about what you'll get in there. You could read some reviews and testimonials from the 10,000 or so people that are currently members of the blueprint, have been for years now. And ultimately, you want to smack around your friends in fantasy football. Maybe you have a great team and you want to get ready for the postseason. Maybe you're 3-3, losing record. This is your chance to turn it around. The fantasy blueprint. Check it out at jointheblueprint.com. Now, the next situation we have to talk about, you can see right here, these are the Ravens quarterbacks, because I kind of just want to talk about their whole team. Obviously, Lamar Jackson has been banged up. He's been missing time with a hamstring injury, and now they're going on their bye week. This has cratered the entire ecosystem for the Ravens, who the first part of the season were looking great with Lamar, and since then, as expected, guys like Derrick Henry, guys like Zay Flowers, everybody attached to this offense has taken a step back. As you could see this past week, I mean, Zay Flowers with Cooper Rush, this was like a good game for him. 6 catches for 46 yards, had 10 targets, just the fact that he had over 10 fantasy points. Even Derrick Henry had he averaged 5 yards per carry, over 122 yards. We took his over on rushing yards, which was in the 60s, his lowest that we've seen in years. That was the bottom moment we saw it. But even this doesn't find the end zone because the Ravens offense without Lamar isn't getting to the red zone. So only 12 fantasy points for Derrick Henry. You're probably first, maybe second round fantasy pick. That's just not going to cut it. And that was one of his best performances in a while. This offense needs Lamar Jackson back, but it's creating the perfect buy low opportunity, because not only has the offense been struggling since Lamar got hurt, but also they're going on bye this week. So anybody who has Lamar, who has Henry, who has Flowers is about to get another 0 in their lineup. And odds are, if you have those players, maybe your team hasn't been that good because you haven't had your Ravens. Well, this is opening up a situation to buy low on a guy like Zay Flowers, for example. Let's just go down to his game logs. Those first 3 weeks of the season, Zay Flowers in the Ravens offense were averaging 37 real life points per game. Zay Flowers was the wide receiver 1, then he put up 15 fantasy points, then he had a stinker, then he had 14 fantasy points, right, in these games where Lamar Jackson is starting. So he had 3 out of 4 weeks where he was great. He was averaging over 15 points per week. He was a borderline top 12 wide receiver with Lamar Jackson in fantasy. And since then, Zay Flowers has not been that. He's gotten you 12 and 8 points. He's been outside the top 40 wide receivers. Let's look at another guy. Derrick Henry. What was Derrick Henry doing? And he was struggling in general, but what was he doing? Because their defense was bad and everybody was injured. It's not just Lamar who's injured on this team, but what was he doing to start the season? Okay, he had his 2 best games in the 3 games where Lamar Jackson was fully healthy. The RB1, then a stinker, then he found the end zone and got you 11 fantasy points. Since then, 8 fantasy points, RB43, 9 RB29, and this past week, he still couldn't crack the top 12 running backs despite having over 120 rushing yards. These last 3 games, without Lamar Jackson being there fully healthy, Derrick Henry ranks outside the top 35 running backs in points per game. They need Lamar back, but thankfully, or luckily for them, after the bye week, Lamar should be back. This pretty much sums it up right here by Run Lamar Run over on Twitter. Ravens offense with Lamar Jackson got 93 points in 3 weeks. Ravens offense without Lamar Jackson had 13 points in 2 weeks, a minus 81 point differential. He says, thank God the bye week is here. Thank thank God the bye week is here. Coming out of the bye week, great matchup at home against the Bears. They go on the road in an amazing matchup against the Dolphins. A Vikings defense that hasn't looked as good the last couple of weeks, though they do come out of the bye. Then they get the Jets. I mean, you get the Bengals. 5 out of their next 6 games are positive to amazing matchups, and you're going to get Lamar back, and they're getting a bunch of other players on defense and offense back. The Ravens might be finally going to make a run. Lamar could be, it's not a shocker to say that he would be maybe the number 1 quarterback the second half of the season. You wouldn't be shocked if you saw that. So now's the time to trade for Lamar, to trade for Derrick Henry, to trade for Zay Flowers while their stock is completely low and you can get them for the cheap. I mean, here's an example right now. Derrick Henry, Rico Dowdle's the perfect guy to ship away. Rest of season, Derrick Henry is still a top 25 overall player. Rest of season, Rico Dowdle is nowhere near a top 25 overall player despite his last 2 great weeks. I like Travis Etienne. I actually really do. Derrick Henry I'd still rather have. Garrett Wilson, who now has an injury, then he's going to have a bye week, might not be usable for a few weeks. Justin Fields looks terrible. Obviously, in my opinion, give me Derrick Henry there. So go out and buy your Ravens while you still can. Now, I just mentioned Travis Etienne's name, and I said I actually want to be acquiring him because I do. I'd rather have Derrick Henry, but I still want Travis Etienne right now. The last 2 weeks are giving you a cheaper price point on Etienne. First month of the season, amazing. He looked like one of the best running backs in football. Last 2 months, last 2 weeks, the usage has still been there, but the problem is the points and production have. As you can see, those first 4 weeks, Travis Etienne, the RB6, the RB14. His worst game was the RB21, still a solid usable week, then the RB13. Since then, just 8 fantasy points, 9 fantasy points. He's finished outside the top 24 running backs over the past 2 weeks, which is 58 scoreless yards and 55 scoreless yards. Travis Etienne, as you can see right here from JJ Zachariason, has failed to score double-digit PPR points in each of the last 2 games, despite having his highest 2 target share marks of the season. Okay, so he hasn't scored a touchdown the last 2 weeks, but the usage on the ground is staying up, and now he's seeing even more passing game usage. LaQuinn Allen isn't seeing as much a backup running back. Baishal Tutin's basically not involved the past 2 weeks in this offense. You're still getting this guy in Travis Etienne who's seeing 60% of the snaps, 70% of the backfield overall opportunities or so. Even during these last 2 weeks when he's been somewhat struggling in fantasy because he hasn't found the end zone, 61% of the snaps, a commanding 66% of the rush attempts, even leading the backfield in routes run and key opportunities in the red zone and on some third down and longs. So Travis Etienne to me is still a running back that I want to be having. He looks like the running back that we saw in 2023 when he had his best finish in fantasy coming off of his own injury, a top 10 finish. And keep in mind, in this season, when Etienne had his only top 10 running back season, he only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. He was inefficient off injury. His offensive line stunk. This year, he's averaging 5.3 yards per carry. He looks insanely efficient. Travis Etienne is somebody you want to try and buy right now if you can off of these 2 dud weeks. Some trades that are happening right now, I mean, this is kind of pathetic. Tyler Algier for Etienne, just because he had a touchdown in prime time is pretty crazy. AJ Brown for Etienne is actually a legitimate, like, a 1-for-1 at this point. If we redrafted, they'd both be around that third, probably still AJ Brown for me there, but 3rd or 4th round. Zay Flowers, I want to get Zay Flowers. They're kind of even. Chase Brown, give me Travis Etienne. Amarion Hampton, who might miss another 6 weeks, who knows, give me Travis Etienne. Quentin Johnson, give me Travis Etienne. J.K. Dobbins, give me Travis Etienne. So Etienne is available. Those are all trades that have happened as of today of this recording. You can get him right now if you can for the cheap. Try and send an offer out. And let's stick with the Jacksonville Jaguars because honestly, it's been a frustrating season for the 2nd overall pick, 1st round pick for the Jaguars, who they traded the fortune for to get up in the draft in Travis Hunter. It's been frustrating. Why is he playing so much defense? Why isn't he out there downfield? Why is he only being used in the slot and short? Right, all this stuff about Travis Hunter, it is slowly in the background trending up. Now I get it. If you looked at the box score this past week, you're like, what the heck? He still stinks. You're looking at Brian Thomas breakout for 90 yards and a touchdown and 8 catches, right? Then you're looking at Travis Hunter, just 4 catches for 15 yards, only 5.5 fantasy points in a PPR format. Heck, a standard format. I don't know why you're playing in those. Only 1.5 points. This is atrocious. What gives? Why is he in a video to buy low on Sal outside of the fact that he's just not been producing, so he's probably cheap to acquire? The background usage is interesting because believe it or not, this past week, he led the team running 86% of the routes. In past weeks, sometimes it's only been like 40%, 60%. He led the team with 86% of the routes. A 17% target share is respectable, right? This is a guy who, like, they just have to start getting him used downfield. I'm not going to play this video because I'll get demonetized just from playing it, which is stupid. But if you recall this play right here, right? I'll just play a second of it. This type of player against the Chiefs a couple of games ago, that's what we want to see more of. Not that he's just out of the slot. He's basically a glorified running back getting an average depth to target of 3 or 4 yards. Hopefully, and we saw it last week, he runs more routes and more of those routes start to become downfield. Because let's be honest, he's so damn talented, right? He's so damn talented without ever even going to meetings for the wide receivers in college. He caught 96 balls, 1,200 yards, 26% target share last year, averaging over 13 yards per catch his last 2 seasons in college at Colorado. That's why he was the 2nd overall pick, outside of the fact that he was like arguably the best wide receiver in the country and best cornerback in the country, this dual threat. at least based on the last game, he's starting to play as a full-time player for the most part on offense. Try and buy low right now because he only just had 15 yards despite running his most routes on the year. Everything's trending up in the background, and you could probably get him super cheap. Examples of some trades that are currently happening: Josh Downs after he scored another touchdown. I'd rather have Travis Etienne. Brandon Ayuk, who we have no idea when he's going to return, and apparently there's like some concerns about him. Does he even want to be on the team, which has been like the case with this guy for 3 years now. Give me Travis Hunter. Zach Charbonnet, give me Travis Hunter. Torrey Horton's kind of a joke. Ryan Fleurinet's kind of a joke. Obviously, I want Travis Hunter over those guys. Give me Travis Hunter over Romeo Doubs, who you might actually be able to get that deal done because people just, Doubs has had multiple games where he scored touchdowns, a couple of multi-touchdown games as well in the past year or two. So try and get Travis Hunter while you still can. Now, before we get into this next veteran wide receiver who just had a bad week, you might be able to buy low on him. I don't know if you know this, but I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, and they're offering you a chance to win some real money. All right, here's what I'm talking about. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, whether it's your favorite team, whether it's a guy that you like that week based on his matchup, and that allows you to unlock the upside to potentially win some real money. It's as simple as that. There's no convoluted rules. There's no gimmicks. You just pick more or less on some players, and then you watch those players perform. And now here's the best part, a little bit of a bonus for you. New DraftKings Pick 6 customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This is your opportunity to put your football knowledge to the test. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code SAL. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Now, that veteran receiver you might be able to buy low on is Courtland Sutton because he had one of his very rare bad games. And this bad game was in that game that I mentioned earlier in the Jets-Broncos, one of the worst games I've ever watched in my entire life. It was disgusting, 13-11. What a terrible way to start your morning. Hopefully you did not watch this game. Okay, but in this game, one of the worst games that you'll ever see, Courtland Sutton had a tough matchup against Sauce Gardner. Courtland Sutton, like basically every single player in this game, struggled. 1 catch, 17 yards. It was a down game for Courtland Sutton, which he rarely has. Look at how bad this game was. Fantasy points scored in this game. Breece Hall had 6, and that was a great showing. Fields 5, Dobbins 4, Garrett Wilson less than 3, Sutton 2.2. These are the fantasy relevant players in this game. None of them had 6 fantasy points. Insane. So Courtland Sutton had a bad game, which is only like the 3rd time in the past, 18 games with the Broncos that he's had a bad game. To start the season, he was the wide receiver 12. Then he had a bad game, right, in a tough matchup. I believe, was that the one? Let's see here. Which matchup was that? Xavier Howard. So no, that wasn't a tough matchup. Oh, that was the matchup where they basically just went into the slot and the running backs. Okay, wide receiver 3 right here. Overall 24 points, 19 points, 18 points. I mean, this is a guy who goes out there and has 5 amazing games. We're talking top 10 overall games for the most part, and then he has a dud. I'll take that on my fantasy team if you're only going to have 3 duds all year long, which was the case basically last year with Sutton as well. This is an awesome tweet by Scott Barrett over on Twitter. He says, the roster in Courtland Sutton is like owning stock in Exxon. Look at his last 14 games. I mean, you could just look at this right now. If you're listening on the podcast version, it's 17, 23. This is including this year. 19, 15, 29, 16. Let's date back to last year when he had 16, 21, 18, 24, 19. Oh, 1 point, right? He's now had 3 games over his last 16 to 17 where he wasn't going out there and getting you at least like 12 fantasy points. And in a lot of those games, he's getting you 15 to 20 plus. So off of this down game, I want to get Courtland Sutton right now. Look at some of the trades. Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin, David Montgomery. I'm trading all these guys to acquire Courtland Sutton. Rico Dowdle. I even want to trade Rico Dowdle to get Courtland Sutton. If we redrafted today, Courtland Sutton is probably a firm 3rd round, maybe early 4th round pick. Rico Dowdle would not be that. Okay, let's stick on the veteran wide receivers because this next guy we recently talked about, he's going to come out of the bye week here. It is Nico Collins. We talked about him last week. He's coming out of the bye week with some momentum. If you take out week 1, which was a dud for him and the entire offense, those 4 games since then, so weeks 2 through 5, there we go. Then they went on the bye in week 6, 16.6 fantasy points, 7.8 targets per game, and 71 receiving yards per game according to RotoViz. That is very good. 16.6 fantasy points is strong. You took him in the 1st round. That's borderline basically his 1st round wide receiver type production. And before the bye week, we saw the offense, albeit in great matchups, start to get going. They had 26 to 0, right? In this game, CJ Stroud's completing almost every single one of his passes, 22 for 28, multiple touchdowns, averaging over 8 yards per attempt. Nico Collins scored a touchdown in that game. Their last game before the bye, great matchup against basically the Ravens backups as they had nobody healthy. Another great matchup, sure, but CJ Stroud, it's good to see he's taking advantage of this. CJ Stroud completes 23 of 27 passes, 4 touchdowns, 9 yards per attempt. Nico Collins had another touchdown in this game. CJ Stroud has 6 touchdown passes in his last 2 games and only 8 incompletions. The matchups were easy, they were softer, I get it, but this is great to see going into the bye week. Coming out of the bye week, you would expect him to only build off of that. And let me just remind you, last year, Nico Collins was great when healthy as well. So here's some of the deals you can currently get done for Nico Collins, which is just a joke. Debo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, even Jamar Chase, give me Nico Collins. Kyron Williams, I know he's been great. I'll take Nico Collins. Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, give me Nico Collins over all these dudes. If we redrafted today, to me, Nico Collins is still a 1st round pick, and all the other names I just mentioned would not be first-round picks. Maybe Jamar Chase would be a late first-round pick. He'd be right around pick like 10 or 11, but so would Nico Collins. Next up, and this is not a joke, do not turn off your TVs, phones, laptops, tablets, whatever you're watching on Apple Watches. I don't even know if that's a thing. Who cares? Isaiah Pacheco is in this video. Here's the reason why he's in this video. Because I'm looking at the box scores. I'm watching all the film. I'm looking at everything that matters when it comes to buy low situations. Kind of like Travis Hunter, the box scores have been terrible. Same for Isaiah Pacheco. But even though he's going out there and just seeing 12 carries for 50 yards, nothing special, and catching one ball for 0 yards, right? 13 touches for 51 yards. You're getting 6 fantasy points in a PPR format. You're saying, why the hell is this guy telling me to buy Isaiah Pacheco? He's basically done absolutely nothing on the season. And I agree with you. The one interesting thing though, Isaiah Pacheco this past week, he played 77% of the snaps. He saw 60% of the backfield carries. He saw 76% of the routes run. Let's scroll over. Short down and distance, 80%. 2-minute offense he was getting. Inside the 5-yard line touches. He was on the field for those as well in the red zone. Isaiah Pacheco at no point this season was seeing anywhere near 70%. You were lucky if he was getting 50% of the snaps. You would not get any carries inside the red zone. Those were all Kareem Hunts. That switched this past week. And that's extremely important to note because the last time we saw that type of usage was the last time he was healthy to start last year when he had 78 yards and a touchdown, then 111 yards before suffering a pretty gruesome injury and then not returning. Those were the first 2 weeks of the season. He didn't return until week 13. And since then, he basically hasn't been the same type of explosive player. What if that's starting to change, right? What if the fact that he just got over 70% of the snaps holds up in an offense that Patrick Mahomes looks like an MVP again? The offense is looking great. Now Rashee Rice comes back. I'm not going to say that this snap share is going to hold up, right? Maybe it was just a 1 week thing. Maybe it was a matchup thing. But if it does, and Pacheco starts seeing 15 plus touches a game, this is what you get when Pacheco does that. This is according to Township Toes over on Twitter. Isaiah Pacheco career games with 15 plus touches in order. Look at this. 82 yards, 107, all a bunch of games in the 80s and 90s in yards. He basically does not go under 60 yards in any single game. He averages 93 yards per game when he sees at least 15 carries, but he hasn't seen 15 carries since week 2 of last year. He just saw his snap share come back to how it was last year. If that holds, we might be back in the Isaiah Pacheco business. It's not going to cost a lot to acquire him, so maybe try and do so. Here's some recent trades for Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, it's like a joke. Evan Ingram, Amari DiMercado, Trey Tucker, Kendre Miller. I could keep scrolling here. Tony Pollard is like probably the only fair one. Calvin Ridley, who just had a hamstring injury. I'll take Isaiah Pacheco over all these guys. I'm not going to say Isaiah Pacheco is going to pay off if you took him in the 6th or 7th round of your draft. All I'm saying is for the first time this year, we actually saw good, strong usage. Really for the first time since week 2 of last year, good, strong usage for Isaiah Pacheco. 13 touches, 78% of the snaps. If that holds up in this offense, he's going to start scoring touchdowns. So these are the players you should trade for in your fantasy league before your friends do. Now, if you want to see the players you should add off the waiver wire, even if your waivers have already processed, make sure that some of these guys have not been added. These are 10 players who can change your roster right now and help you, especially during the bye weeks. You can check out that video right here.